Hi friends, welcome to Loved by Cacao. This is a home for all of us who love cacao, to share our stories, to elevate the voice of cacao through voices from all around the world. Here we will connect the threads of light that cacao is weaving between us, from heart to heart. Thank you for being here. You might like to make yourself a delicious cup of cacao to enjoy while you listen, to tune in with this sacred medicine. I am Pania, lover and facilitator of cacao, and I invite you to step in through the door to this cozy home. Come to sit on a cushion in this circle together, and may we allow ourselves to be here, to be loved by cacao. Welcome back. Aren't those birds beautiful? You can hear some of our beautiful New Zealand birds in that intro, especially the tui. And thanks again to my friend Kamal for creating that music, that intro. And I forgot to thank the birds in the last episodes. So I just wanted to say thank you, birds, for your beautiful frequencies, which go so well with cacao. And just so grateful for the bird song that I get to hear most mornings and evenings. Very lucky. So thank you, birdies. And thank you, listeners, for coming back again. I hope that you enjoyed those first 2 episodes and those mini episodes and that you now have more of an idea of what Loved by Cacao is about. But if you have more questions than answers still, that's okay too, as many things will come to light as we head down this path together. So I am sitting here today on the floor again. Seems to be my spot for recording, because I've been sitting with Mama Cacao to prepare, and I have a beautiful altar in front of me again with flowers and crystals, and yeah, I've just been tuning in with this gorgeous cacao. I have this beautiful mug that some friends made for me, which I just love, and I have Keith's cacao today. I've been enjoying some delicious Guatemalan Keith's cacao, which feels very fitting for this episode, as you will find out why. You will find out why later. And today I have mixed this gorgeous cacao with a little bit of almond butter, which I love because it makes it super creamy and delicious, and some maca, cinnamon, a pinch of salt, and maple syrup. Super yummy. Oh, and a little bit of coconut sugar as well. Just a little bit of each of those, and a decent serving of cacao. And I blended that up in a pot and, well, stirred it up in the pot and then mixed it in the blender as well. And yeah, it's been really nice, and I've just been really enjoying tuning in and sitting here remembering my story with how this all came to be. And so that's what we're here for today. The passion of Pania. Cacao is the passion of Pania, she who goes everywhere with chocolate, as I have been known before. So yeah, we are here to talk about me today. This entire podcast is not really about me, it's about cacao. And I do feel a little shy to share my story because really I want to shine light on others' stories. And but I know that I personally love to hear the context of who I'm listening to hear their background when I'm listening to podcasts or learning about somebody. And I do want to share other people's stories, but I think it's fitting I go first. So thank you for tuning in for this. And I do love my story. with cacao, and I do look back on it with fondness and delight at the way that cacao has become such a part of me over the years. Yeah, it's really a delight, and it humbles me, and I have so much gratitude. And it's been a journey of quite a few years, and I made many notes for today, but I had to just break them down into little points because it was just too much, and I thought it's quite a big journey that I've been on with cacao, and I just don't think I'll share it all in one podcast. It would be too long. So I am going to let go of the notes a little bit. I might refer to them from time to time just so I remember the things I really want to share, but I'm going to also see what cacao brings through as well in this moment. Like I'm just sitting with you, telling you my story. And cacao is a plant medicine teacher. The plant realms have a lot to teach us, and I didn't really know that at the start. And maybe you haven't discovered that yet either, and that's perfectly okay. A lot of people just relate cacao with chocolate, and that's a way in, and it's a beautiful way in, and it was my way in. So I will get to that soon. But this story with cacao feels very close to my heart because I feel like I'm talking about a dear, dear relationship in my life. And that's why I preface this by saying that cacao is a plant medicine, because we can have a relationship with these beautiful plants who teach us so much. And there's many plants in the plant kingdom that are here to teach us, and cacao is definitely one of those, and is my chosen one, I guess, the one that I have the strongest relationship with. And I talk about cacao as she, as Mama Cacao, just because that's what feels natural to me. But it's about having our own relationship with her, and you don't have to refer to cacao like that. So anyway, I feel like I'm talking about a dear relationship, and it's quite tender in a way for me to share this, because cacao to me is like a friend and a mother and a grandmother, and also like my boss all at once, all wrapped into one. And yeah, so where this started is, well, really to talk about how my relationship with cacao began, I need to start with chocolate and childhood. Because it starts with chocolate for most of us, I think. And that's one of the reasons that I think cacao is such a wonderful plant medicine, because we all know chocolate, and many of us love chocolate, and we can relate. And so chocolate and childhood, it kind of, I feel it begins with my beautiful mother. And cacao is such a mother, so it's quite lovely that I feel a connection with my own mother and chocolate. And my beautiful mother left Earthside in 2003, and I was only 21, so that's a whole other story and journey in itself. But she did not leave without imparting her love of chocolate to me, and I'm grateful for that. She also had a great love of chocolate, and I do wish that she had had the opportunity to experience cacao as an ally, as a plant medicine, in the way that I am today. Who knows, maybe she is from the spirit realms. Maybe she's experiencing it in other ways. But as her earthly self that I knew her as, she mostly knew chocolate as a sweet treat. And so she used to stash chocolate in her bedroom, probably to keep it away from me, so that I wouldn't find it in the kitchen. And also because my brother was allergic to dairy, so he couldn't eat the chocolate she had because it was Cadbury's Dairy Milk Fruit and Nut. That was her favourite one, and she had a real weakness for that. So she'd keep it in her bedroom away from us kids, and of course I, however, would hear the rustle of the tinfoil package being opened when she was having her chocolate moment. I would hear it from the other side of our little 3-bedroom home, and I would appear in her doorway with a big smile on my face and puppy dog eyes. And of course, she would share it with me because she was a very loving and generous mum. And so we would have this beautiful mother-daughter chocolate enjoyment moment together. And it was really lovely. We'd smile and enjoy it, and just, it was like our little thing together. Looking back, I do think, oh, my poor mum, she couldn't enjoy her chocolate in peace. But at the same time, maybe she knew what she was doing by opening that packet, and she probably would have anticipated my hasty arrival. So yeah, that was our little moment. It was a little bit naughty, secret, and delicious. And I say naughty because she was actually all about whole foods and organic foods, and our diet was mostly that way. So this chocolate was definitely a treat for us. But I do have other memories, of course, the classic childhood memories of chocolate Easter eggs, hunting for Easter eggs, and giant bunnies that my grandparents gave me, chocolate bunnies that is. And my dad, who lived separate from us for most of my childhood, he was the one who had the naughty things in the cupboard. He kept the Cocoa Puffs and the Milo and the Nutella at his house. So when I was over there, I would enjoy all of those by the spoonful, including the Nutella and the Milo straight off the spoon, and usually when no one was looking. And also my grandmother had a weakness for chocolate, and she would keep little wrapped individual chocolates in her bedside table. And when I was staying with her, I'd go to say goodnight, and she would pull one out for me and give it to me as a pre-bed treat, and just like a sign of grandmotherly love. So all of these delicious memories are related with special moments, but also kind of the sense of naughtiness, special occasions, and treats. And so that was like the way that I saw chocolate, as a treat, as something a little bit naughty, and sometimes had in secret. So it was actually kind of a revelation for me to grow up, go and study nutrition. I did a diploma of nutrition, and during that time I learned all about how chocolate is actually a superfood, as I'm sure you probably know. So yeah, I'll get to that more. I will get to that more, because I actually wanted to share one more childhood memory. There was a time when I wanted to share my love of chocolate with my friends. And this memory is a little bit bittersweet for me, I guess, like dark chocolate. But I think I must have been around 13 or so, maybe 14. And it's my first memory of really wanting to share that love of chocolate with others. And I decided for my birthday that year to have a chocolate fondue party. And I thought it was a great idea. And my mum was on board. She helped organize everything. And we had all this beautiful fresh fruit that we chopped up. And we had this huge pot of melted chocolate and all the utensils to dip the fruit into the chocolate. And to me, like, there was nothing better really than fresh fruit and melted chocolate together. And I was really excited to sit around the table and share this with my girlfriends who I'd invited over for the day. Now Now, I don't know how they would remember it, if they would even remember it, but the way I remember this going is that they kind of teased me for it a little bit. I don't know, maybe it wasn't naughty enough, it was a little bit too innocent for the age that we were, it wasn't the latest trend, whatever. They just weren't really into it. And I was quite sad that this thing I was quite excited about wasn't really well received. And I just felt a little bit of like I'd done something that was a little bit cringe. And so I'm really grateful looking back that I didn't let that stop me, even though it was kind of a weird experience. Thankfully, I learned anyway to own my chocolate obsession. So as an adult, I could almost always be found with chocolate on me. And in 2007, when I was studying nutrition, I learned all about the benefits of dark chocolate and how unhealthy the processed stuff really is. And I have a memory too of, do you remember David Wolfe? I'm not sure where he is these days, but he was really big in the nutrition world at that time. And he was also really big on raw cacao. And he wrote a book about it. And I remember going to see him once on a tour that he was doing. And he got up on stage and talked all about raw food. His whole thing was raw food, and so raw cacao as well. And he would teach about how cacao can give us so much energy, and it's a superfood, and it's really, really, really beneficial for the body and the mind and the brain. So learning all of this, the bars of chocolate in my bag that I would carry around with me became 70% cacao or higher only. And my friends knew that they could always count on me to have chocolate. I would always bring it to parties. I would even share it around at lunchtime at college or at work. And they just knew that I was the one to always bring the chocolate. And I would say that I kind of relied on it. I always needed my piece of chocolate or pieces, and sometimes it would kind of get me through boring or challenging days at that time. It was definitely something to lean on, but looking back, it never quite satisfied. And I think because it wasn't what my body was actually wanting, which is cacao, the real whole food cacao. So I was still a coffee drinker at that time, and I also used coffee as a crutch. And I loved coffee. I still love the taste and the smell of coffee, but my body really did not like it. And it's never really agreed with me. My nervous system doesn't handle it well, nor does my digestion, and I get anxiety a little bit. And I knew for a long time that I needed to cut down on coffee. My intuition got louder and louder around this. So it was something that, that little intuitive voice kept saying, cut down the coffee, cut down the coffee. And for a long time I didn't listen. But then one day, and I think this is where things really shifted for me with cacao, is one day in early 2015, a friend of mine who I was visiting wanted to make me a special drink, and it was a blended drink with cacao, with using raw cacao powder. And I believe that he put coffee in it too, and raw cacao powder and coconut oil and some kind of sweetener. And he blended it up and served it to me, and I just thought, wow, this is the most amazing drink ever. This is incredible. And so I went home with this idea and thought, what if I take the coffee out of it and have this as a coffee replacement? So I began experimenting and started trying to see if I could drink cacao instead of coffee. And it actually started to work for me. I was really, really enjoying drinking this rich, thick, chocolatey goodness. And bear in mind, I still had no idea about ceremonial cacao. I was just using raw cacao powder, which is not the whole bean. But anyway, I was receiving a lot from it. And during this experimentation, this was a time when I was in a job I really didn't like. And I was looking for a way out. I was looking for an idea of something different I could do, maybe a business idea. And one day I was actually in the shower, which is where some of the best ideas come through sometimes. And I was thinking about this beautiful raw chocolate drink. And I thought, I've never seen anyone selling something like this. What if I started taking this to the market? And I want to help other people get off coffee too if they want to, because it's feeling really beneficial to me. And maybe I could start making this in a way that I can share it with others, take it to our local market and sell it. And I got really excited about this idea. I remember I went out to dinner with my then husband, and we spent most of the dinner actually fleshing out this idea. I remember writing it on a napkin. All of the thoughts that we had, we were just writing on this napkin, and I couldn't let this idea go. And over the next couple of months, it completely snowballed. This idea of just, at first I thought, I'll just have a little table and like a pot of cacao and maybe a gas cooker to keep it hot on, and I'll serve it up. But this idea completely snowballed into a food cart, and it became, I was selling raw chocolate cakes, and so it wasn't just about the drink anymore. It turned into raw cacao drinks, raw chocolate cakes, and other flavors as well, bliss balls and like these little chocolate slices. And I named it Chocolate and Spice, and it was all about raw cacao. So this was before I knew much about cacao. I didn't fully know what I was doing, and I've since learned that there isn't really such a thing as raw cacao because the beans are fermented in the process of making cacao. But anyway, that's another story. You have to start somewhere, and I was starting with what I knew at the time, and I wanted to share something healthy, and it was all vegan, sugar-free, or cane sugar-free, and I had so much fun with that project. It was something that just really brought a lot of creativity and light into my life. I ended up being able to leave my job, and I started going to markets and festivals, and just looking back on that, I think what a lovely time. And it was super sweet to start serving cacao to people, and the reaction was so lovely. Like, I didn't really know what to expect. I'd never done something like that before, not quite like that. And I tell you what, it's not that hard to sell chocolate. People love chocolate. And so I'm so grateful still to some of the beautiful customers, some of my friends and customers who would come every week and get their cacao. And some people actually did stop buying coffee. I'm not saying coffee's terrible, but for some of us it just doesn't work. But some people did shift from drinking coffee to cacao, and they'd come every week and get their cacao and have their slice of cake, and we'd talk, and it was just super lovely. Chocolate and spice. And I remember when I was starting to get that business going, I was doing loads of research into cacao, and I was learning online how to make chocolate. So it was more chocolate focused, I guess, at that point. And so I was taking courses online, and it felt so luxurious and wonderful to have this excuse to order these huge bags of cacao butter and cacao powder. So I think I ordered 5 kilo bags. So I had like 10 kilograms all at once of cacao butter and cacao powder. and I learned how to temper chocolate, so mixing the powder with the butter. And I just remember having this huge stainless steel bowl and tempering this chocolate back and forth, and the aroma of this heated cacao, this heated chocolate, the aroma wafting up into my face, and the gentle movement of tempering it, like moving it back and forth with a spatula. I was doing that by hand at that stage. I didn't have any machinery. I felt like the character from Chocolat. If you know the book or the movie Chocolat, I think her name's Vianne. I felt like her in her shop mixing up her chocolates, and I loved that book, and I actually read it while I was creating Chocolate and Spice, and I just felt like I was her, and I was mixing up this beautiful chocolate to serve and make people happy. So that's kind of where it began for me, and it felt so just rich, I guess, and I was like, do I really get to do something that I enjoy so much? And at that time, I also started to hear about cacao ceremonies for the first time. And it's funny looking back, because I'm generally pretty open-minded to these things, and I was all about health, and but even then I thought, that sounds a little out there, a little weird, like a ceremony with cacao, what's that all about? And I felt drawn to it, but I also felt like it wasn't for me yet. So I didn't quite look into it at that point. But looking back, I can see how Mama Cacao was really weaving her magic through me already. And I think that happens to a lot of us on our cacao journey. We'll look back and see, oh, she was working her magic on me and I didn't even know it. And I would say that saying yes to working with cacao really, really changed my life, because I said yes to this chocolate and spice business, and it gave me a confidence that I hadn't really had before. And that confidence helped me so much because in 2016, so I'd only been running chocolate and spice for less than a year, and in 2016 my marriage at the time totally fell apart. This was a really difficult time in my life, and because of the way my life was set up, I needed to let go of the chocolate and spice business as well. And it was really sad to let go of so much all at once. But I'm grateful for the confidence that it gave me, because I think it really helped me on the journey that I needed to go on after that. So I had to say goodbye to everything related to chocolate and spice. I sold the food cart, and that was actually a real blessing because it helped me fund the next adventure, which is going to bring me to how I started to work with cacao in the way that I do now. I love looking back on this. Let's see. So when my marriage fell apart, and it felt like everything fell apart at that time, I really didn't know what I was doing with my life. I was just like, what am I going to do now? And the only thing that my heart was telling me was travel. And I had been wanting to travel for a little while, because it had been quite a long time since I'd been out of New Zealand. And I have loved travel all my life. And I was like, well, if everything's falling apart, I just have to travel. And I would say I kind of had my own eat, pray, love journey after that. And so I really just followed a path of going where I felt I was led to go. And I ended up going to the Americas, the United States first, and then Canada for various reasons. And I got to a point where I felt really exhausted. And that was the eat part. I was on the eat part of the Eat, Pray, Love. I was really enjoying the food everywhere I went, and of course tasting delicious chocolate when I could find it. But I was also exhausted, and I was looking for somewhere to go and retreat. And I just knew at this stage that I needed to heal and recover and give my body some love and give myself some time to really look at what I wanted in my life and where I was going. And so I just thought, yoga retreat. I just need a yoga retreat or a writing retreat or something like that. So I was looking for where I could go, and as it turned out, an old friend of mine had a retreat center in Guatemala. Now, I had never considered going to Guatemala. It wasn't on my radar at all, but I had a call with her and she completely sold it to me. Her retreat center sounded really amazing, and I said to her, I'm coming. I'm booked in for a month. And she said, just so you know, this place, Lake Atitlan, is pretty special, and sometimes people end up spending longer here than they realize they're going to. I was like, okay, noted, but I'm booking 6 weeks. We'll see how it goes. So I flew there, and right before I went, I had a really difficult time. And I arrived in Guatemala actually very run down, broken-hearted, exhausted, just stressed, all the things. It was a really difficult time for me. And I also was kind of in shock at arriving in this new country. I was a little bit nervous. I didn't know what to expect. And it was a time when I was really struggling to feel good about myself and about my life. And I arrived in Antigua, Guatemala, a beautiful little small city, and I had 2 nights there, I think, before heading to the lake. And I thought, I just really need something to cheer me up because I feel terrible. And walking around, I saw, lo and behold, a chocolate museum, the Antigua Choco Museo. And I walked in there, I was like, chocolate, I know that chocolate makes me happy. And I discovered that they were doing a little course all about cacao and the history of cacao and how to make chocolate. And I already knew a lot of what was going to be taught in that class, but I thought I just need to do this to cheer me up and get my mind to calm down, because I was also having a lot of racing thoughts at that time. So I signed up for this class, and it was really sweet. There was a beautiful young Mayan man who was teaching us, and he told us all about the Mayan history with cacao, and we tried all the different stages of the cacao, and we got to grind up the beans and make our own chocolate, and we drank cacao, and it was super lovely. And he gave us a lot of beautiful knowledge, and towards the end I told him that the next day I was heading to Lake Atitlan, and he said to me, if you love cacao, there's a chocolate shaman, or a cacao shaman at the lake, and you should find him. And I was like, oh, that sounds amazing. I need to find this person. And I was so surprised by him saying that I didn't even think to ask him like what this shaman's name was or where he was or anything. I was just like, okay, I'm going to find him. And so I went there not knowing who it was or where he was. And this is how cacao was leading me, or one of the examples of cacao just leading me along the path. Because the very day that I arrived at the lake, I met some wonderful women who told me that the next day they were going to a cacao ceremony with Keith, who was known at the time as the chocolate shaman. And of course I was just like, no way. I wanted to meet him. I want to meet him. I want to go to a ceremony. And I had no idea how I was going to find him. And then you're telling me straight away that you'll take me there tomorrow. So I was led directly to his door, and I went to my very first cacao ceremony with the wonderful Keith of Keith's Cacao. Dear Keith, I send you love and blessings. Keith sadly passed away earlier this year in January, and I'm very, very grateful that I was able to meet him. Such a wonderful, dear soul who has done so much for the world of cacao and opened so many people up to the possibility of what it is to work with cacao. And he gave so generously and taught so much, and he just had a really light, beautiful, wonderful heart and soul. And yeah, I'm really, really grateful I was able to sit on his porch and experience his magic and open up to the magic of cacao through that experience. And so I got to sit with him. It was, at first, I honestly didn't understand what was going on. I really had no idea. And it wasn't what I expected. And perhaps I'll give more details on that story another time. But it was, yeah, not what I expected, but it hit me in my heart anyway. And I left feeling impacted. And I didn't really understand why. And the next day or so, or a couple of days after that, I went to start my retreat at my friend's retreat centre. And I had booked in there for a whole month. And after 2 days, I was like, I know there's another ceremony happening at Keith's place. And I had agreed that I would be in silence at the retreat centre for most of the month. But the cacao was still really calling me strongly, so I actually left the retreat centre and went to another ceremony with Keith before going back and really committing myself to the retreat. And I took cacao in with me, and I was having cacao every day during my retreat, just a gentle one. And that was my first time having pure cacao made from the whole bean, not the raw cacao powder that I'd been using. And it was really special to sit with it every day. And I was in silence for most of that month. So it was a potent time for me. A really potent time. All of my time in Guatemala was potent. And my friend was right. I ended up spending 3 months there, and I've since been back twice, and I hope to go back again. It is a very, very, very special place. And so it truly opened me up to the magnificence and the magic and the medicine of Mama Cacao, and planted a seed. And I still didn't really understand that seed, but I had a deeper appreciation for cacao than ever before, which was a wonderful thing to have, because I was blessed enough to meet my now partner, Alex, at the lake. And after some time, he and I embarked on a really, really amazing trip all through Central America. We went house sitting and traveling and exploring from El Salvador all the way through down into Ecuador. And everywhere we went, and that was over about 2 years, well, not quite 2 years, but nearly, with some time in Canada as well. And everywhere we went, I would try the local cacao. I would seek out as much cacao or chocolate as I could find that was produced locally, and I would try it and enjoy it and compare it to other countries, and it was just such a blessing. And I'm so grateful that I was able to do that, because I really learned a lot about cacao in that time. And I was just doing it because I love chocolate and because I love cacao, and I wanted it in my life, and I was curious, but I didn't realize the knowledge and the connection that I was building as I went. And it feels like such a blessing to have had the local cacao in all of those countries. And I would go and find, a lot of the time it wasn't always ceremonial. Like, I could sometimes only find chocolate bars, and they weren't always good. Some of the chocolate there is very, very basic, the way that it's made. But sometimes it was incredible. And like Ecuador, I had no idea before I went to Ecuador that it's an absolutely amazing place for chocolate. I had so much good chocolate in Ecuador, and I even found this incredible chocolate cafe in the little town of Baños, which I lived in for a while. And if you're ever in Baños, Ecuador, I hope that cafe is still there. I don't know if it is, but it was all about chocolate, and they had all these different flavored bars, and you could choose a bar from their selection, say a flavor like chili or orange or peppermint. And I think the bars were about 50 or 100 grams or something, and they would take the whole bar and melt it down and turn it into a hot chocolate drink for you to enjoy right there in the cafe. It was the most rich, delicious chocolate, and very decadent. And they also had 100% cacao paste that they would sell in, like, I think it was like 2-pound blocks. And I didn't really have a source of ceremonial cacao at that time, but I would take these 2-pound blocks with me and enjoy those. And yeah, and so that was a beautiful surprise to learn all about Ecuadorian cacao. And of course, I had the dream of going to a cacao farm. And before Ecuador, we were blessed enough to be able to do that in Nicaragua. So I had been dreaming about seeing cacao in the wild. And while we were living in Nicaragua for a while, we were on the coast, but we took a trip up into the mountains in the north of Nicaragua and had this incredible time for a few days up there, a region called Matagalpa. And I got to visit my very first cacao farm. And that was honestly one of the most incredible days of my life. I love it. Love that memory so, so much. And I actually think that I'm going to share all about that day in its own episode, because it was the most epic day of chocolate and cacao. And I learned so much. So there'll probably be an episode all about that coming out at some stage. But yeah, I got to go to this cacao farm, and then also in Costa Rica, we went to another cacao farm. And I would just be so excited and so happy every time we visited a cacao farm. And the one in Costa Rica, they made their own bean-to-bar chocolate and did a whole beautiful tour where we got to try all their chocolates. And yeah, it was just incredible. So I had this, without even really intending to, I had this incredible tour of the world of chocolate in the Americas. And this led to me eventually deciding to write a series about cacao. And how this came to be is that we had the beautiful opportunity to house sit a house in Mexico. And this would have been in 2019. So I first went to Guatemala at the end of 2016. And then in early 2019, we were house sitting in Mexico and had this incredible house sit where we didn't really have to do much. We were basically there to be security for the house. We even had a housekeeper, and I had never had that kind of experience before of not having to do much in a house sit. And so I had a lot of time on my hands, and I felt this like real sense of spaciousness. And, they say not to wait until you have the time to create, to prioritize creation. And at the same time, having time can be supportive too, because that space got me to a point where I was like, what am I going to do with myself? I'm going to write. And so I decided to write a series about cacao, about what cacao is and my experiences with it. And I started sharing this in parts online. And because of sharing it, which was a really fun thing to do, by the way, I loved it. It was so nice I had this sweet little office space with a wee desk looking out the window into the courtyard, and I would sit down each day with my cacao and I would write. And so people started asking me to create cacao ceremonies. And I didn't really intend that. I was just writing for fun and passion. But that led to people asking for cacao ceremonies, and I was kind of surprised because I hadn't really seen myself as somebody who could run or lead a ceremony. Yet another way that cacao was leading me down the path, showing me the way before I even could see where I was going. And due to these requests, I ended up offering my very first cacao ceremony while I was in Mexico, which kind of feels a bit funny looking back because it's one of the original homes of cacao, and but it was a really sweet, supportive group of people that I met at a full moon ceremony, and there were some local Mexican people who came along too and shared their love for cacao, and we just created something really sweet together. And I remember there being a woman there who was super encouraging to me and just saying, you've got to keep doing this. People need this. People need cacao. People need to open their hearts. She knew that it was my first ceremony, and she was saying, stay on this path. Do this work. And so that was very, very encouraging. And people back home in New Zealand were also asking me to run ceremonies. So I arranged to do a beautiful collaboration with a friend of mine. Only a few days after I got home, Alex and I flew to New Zealand at the end of 2019, thankfully just before the world pretty much shut down. We were lucky to get here in time so we could be here. But yeah, I was able to share cacao when I got home, and people were quite excited about it, and I felt really, really lucky to bring this medicine back in a new way. So I'd left having run Chocolate and Spice, not really understanding what I was doing, and coming back with this whole fresh, this whole fresh understanding of what cacao really is. And even then I didn't fully understand what I was doing, but it was a new way, and I was opening to it more and more, and so were people around me, and it was beautiful to see. And going on that path of learning about the open-hearted, joyful benefits of cacao, I can look back now and see that that's subconsciously what I was actually trying to create with Chocolate and Spice, to give people that open-hearted experience. And I thought I was just trying to offer an alternative to coffee and something yummy and do something creative. I didn't fully see it at the time, but in hindsight I can see that my soul wanted to help people open their hearts and have joy. So that's more what cacao has become for me, and it turned into me running various different cacao creations over time. I had an online course for a little while, and different collaborations with friends, different cacao circles and ceremonies, and offerings and selling cacao as well, and it's been a really beautiful time. And it also got to a point where I was questioning, okay, what's next? And I mentioned that a little bit in the first episode of how this podcast came to be. Loved by Cacao, the next evolution in Pania Joy's cacao journey. So yeah, I got to a place where I'd been running ceremonies and various things, and I am quite a nomad. I move around a lot. I live in a motorhome and I house sit, and I travel around with my partner Alex. We're very nomadic, and it's kind of difficult to do offerings in person on a regular basis when you move around so much. And I also felt that I want to run online cacao ceremonies, but that's not the only thing. And so I was questioning for a long time, how am I working with cacao? And I just felt like she really wanted me to create something new that I hadn't done before. And I held this question for quite some time, about a year. And it was through committing to a daily practice of sitting with her more, and through saying yes to bringing new creation into my life, and saying yes to becoming more of myself in new ways, I made the space for this idea to drop in. And I'm really grateful to my beautiful friend Sarah. She has a podcast called Unraveling Midlife. Shout out Sarah Spence. And I'm so grateful, Sarah, that you contacted me randomly one day, said you were coming through town where I was, and we met up and had a beautiful chat, and we were sitting one morning out in the sunshine, and I think we were sharing a cacao, and I asked you, Sarah, about your podcast, and Sarah gave me the idea of creating my own podcast, which is something I actually wanted to do some years ago, a different subject. I never got around to it, but I've always been curious about the podcast journey. And Sarah just dropped the idea in my lap. What about a cacao podcast? And I was like, oh, now that's an interesting idea. She said cacao and women, because the podcast I wanted to create a few years ago was about women living their joy. And she said, what about cacao? Well, women and their journey with cacao. And that planted a seed which grew in me over the day, and all of a sudden it just burst through my body, and I felt this really strong, energetic, beautiful reaction of I need to do this. And it's cacao and everyone. It's all the stories of these journeys that we get to go on with cacao, and the way that she's opened people's hearts, and how people have found her, and how they work with her, and how she's changed their lives, and thus how she's creating change in the world. And it just shot through my body like an electric shock, and I got very, very, very excited, and I knew that I had to do it. It took me a few months to grow the courage to actually make it happen, and now here we are. So I'm super grateful that this idea came through, because I have to say I'm really loving this creation process, and I'm loving this new way of working with cacao, and I just hope that it will help to spread her joy in a new way through the world, and that we can really connect over these stories together. And I almost named this episode an evolution of love, because that's how it feels to me, or an initiation into love. Like cacao has been gently leading me and opening me and expanding me as I go, working her magic on me. And mostly it's gentle, And sometimes she has a very determined energy, almost stern, like, for example, telling me to create this podcast. Like, come on, let's get on with it. Let's get this going. But at the same time, giving me the energy and the passion to do it. And at other times, Cacao has been so soothing, holding me in times of grief and my tears, calming my stress, giving me energy when I'm tired. She's so loving and so holding and so generous. And I often feel like she knows what I need more than I do. Like she sees the path ahead of me before I do. Just in the same way that I feel like Cacao knew that I needed to create this podcast. So I'm very grateful. It's honestly a dream come true because obviously I love Cacao and I love stories. So this is a podcast that I wish I could listen to, and so to get to create it is really exciting. And I'm so excited to hear and to share all the stories that are going to come through from many different cacao lovers. And I really can't wait to share these stories, and I already actually have a couple of amazing stories coming up. So more about that in a second, but firstly, thank you for listening to my story. It's really an honor to share it. It's an honor to have been walking this path, and it's really fun to look back on all the connections and the way that Cacao has woven herself into my life, and I'm just curious to keep seeing how it will go moving forward. And it's just one of my favorite things, really. So thank you for listening. And next week I have an episode for you, which is a conversation with the beautiful Hannah of De Selva Cacao. So Hannah lives in the far north of New Zealand, and she creates this gorgeous cacao from Mexican beans, and it's called De Selva Cacao, which is of the forest. And her story is super gorgeous, and we had a really beautiful conversation at her land with her cacao, and I can't wait for you to hear it. And she was very kindly my first guest, and I'm super grateful because she was just the sweetest first guest. And so stay tuned for that one, because it's going to be the first podcast where I have a guest, and also we will be doing a giveaway as a celebration of Loved by Cacao launching, and also as a celebration of De Selva Cacao. So Hannah has very kindly gifted something for the podcast so that we can do a giveaway. So stay tuned, because I will be announcing that over on Instagram, Loved by Cacao. And I'll also share more about it in that episode with Hannah, probably at the end. So stay tuned, because I think it's going to be a fun giveaway, and I really look forward to sharing all these stories with you. And just thank you so much for tuning in here. I think this has become quite a long episode. Oh, it's not too crazy long. I'm just looking at the time. I didn't know how long it would take to tell my story. It's a story that spans over more than 8 years. So to narrow that down into an hour is an interesting little journey in itself. And I'm really humbled and honored to share it with you. So sending you so much love and blessings for your journey with Cacao. And let's enjoy this Loved by Cacao journey together. Sending you much love, and until next time. Thank you for opening your heart here and listening today. Please subscribe to keep getting episodes in Apple, Spotify or YouTube. And please share this podcast with your cacao loving friends. You can follow us on Instagram at Loved by Cacao. Please take care of your heart and may you feel loved.